welcome to the first Heart of the Shaman podcast. I am your host, Pavan, and I am here with my co-host, Betty Gallagher. We are very excited about offering this information and healing, and it is also our intention that every episode be a healing transmission for all of those who tune in, and that will have a ripple effect moving forward through time and space.
Hi, Erin. It's my pleasure and my joy and my honor to be with you today. I've always enjoyed when we co-host anything, and I look forward to it and many more.
All right, so we are just going to dive, and first I want to tell you all a little bit about the Heart of the Shaman podcast and our intention beyond the healing information. So essentially why this is unique, and this is a powerful intergenerational discourse between shamans. So both on the cusp of the baby boomer generation and the millennial generation, Betty and myself are shamans with unique stories and perspectives to offer modern day shamanism, perspectives from being a shaman, and then also shamanic healing techniques. So we are going to interview each other and just get more information on all of that. And so I will start with, well, I also want to say briefly, this has been a long time coming. Betty and I have taught some classes together in the past. She used to be here in Charleston. So I'll just say a little bit about my background and work as well, and Betty's. So I'm a shamanic practitioner in Charleston. I'm also an intuitive energy healer and a channel. And I have a practice here locally, seeing clients, and then also teaching classes. And there's a training program attached to that as well. And some of this is also offered virtually. Betty is a longtime friend, mentor, and teacher. She's been a psychic her whole life. And I have had the pleasure of receiving a lot of valuable wisdom and channeled information from her. And I'm just going to say she's never been wrong. And obviously we know, based on the way that things work, that there's a lot of potential and possibilities in any given moment of what can happen. But her capacity to tune into that potential of those highest possibilities is really incredible.
Thank you.
Yay, you're welcome. Okay, so we will start with, let's see, Betty, I'm just going to go through a few things. What did your interest in shamanism, where did that start, or what was your earliest exposure to it?
I think when I was young, I was aware of things, that other people weren't tuned into or aware of. And I was intimidated by that at first. And then as I learned more about it, I started to embrace it. And as I grew, part Comanche on my mother's side, and on my father's side, Irish. So the ceremonies and the rituals and things of both the Celts and the indigenous Native Americans fascinated me. And I wanted to be a part of that. So I started trying to learn more about the natural way that things, come to people. And when I was doing my spiritual messaging in the way of readings and as a medium, talking with the other dimensions, talking with people on the other side, I just realized that I was able to see in the body if there was a malalignment, or if there was an illness or some kind of a problem with the body, it would light up. And it made me feel that I needed to give that information to the person so that they could seek treatment. Usually holistic type. I was leaning toward holistic and energy medicine early on. And it was in a time frame where people were not resilient with, their beliefs. They were more resistant and didn't want to hear about it. So it was difficult to choose whether I should say anything to people, but it became necessary for me to help people in that way. So that's kind of how it started. And, I've learned a lot about my gifts, and how to use them, and spirit helps me discern when I should use it and not.
So thank you so much. This brings up a couple of interesting things that I wanted to touch on as well. First of all, just explaining briefly what a shaman is. And so a shaman essentially, this is an anthropological term. I think it's derived from the language of the Tungus people in Siberia. And it essentially means one who sees or one who knows. And so typically the shamans were the medicine men and women, still are today, of different indigenous cultures around the world. So what does that look like in a modern day context in the Western world? So Betty just, that was a really great example of what that looks like for you. And we're going to delve into it a little bit more. But there's also, and you were talking about this, there's a shaman, and also in different cultures, I will say, right, it would look a little bit different based on where you are. So some shamans would also be midwives or doctors, or, holding the plant medicine ceremonies for people. Those details and how the culture received and set up the healing practices is really different. Again, based on different people and cultures. In the modern day, I would say a shaman is a healer. Another main aspect is the shaman travels for healing and information between worlds or interdimensionally on behalf of their client. So this is just sort of a distinction or food for thought. And then, shamanic techniques, there's a lot of techniques, and these are things that we'll explore now and in further episodes, can help anyone to have a healthier, more balanced lifestyle and just have a higher level of well-being. Shamanism, I would say, encompasses those healing techniques. And it's also a way of, you can be any religion or part of any culture and still practice shamanism. And so the difference there is it's really about being connected to the earth, plants and animals, people and community, really living a life that has respect for all of these things and finding a place of balance and connection with the earth and the rhythm of the planet.
I think you said it, you mentioned that they were midwives, and I kind of, that rings a chord with me that you and I are midwives as we birth the ideas and give birth to new ideas in modern times of how we can bring it forward, and we can continue cultivating the love for nature and the planet and just incorporate that into everything. And I think any healer today, whatever modality they're using or applying, originally shaman. I feel
yes.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for myself, I'll say this is something that found me. Certainly it's like the path and the way found me. I didn't even know what a shaman was until maybe my mid-days, when I came across some teachers and mentors and started on the path. So I think that, that's sort of the way it works when you're in a healing role with it. It's typically not, oh, I want to do this when I grow up. It's sort of like this just becomes a part of your path that you move into. And then again, in the Western world, so what does that look like? And Betty, you said this earlier when we were speaking earlier, but I loved this. There are so many different healing techniques, right? There's different energy healing techniques and breath work and in yogic philosophy, and there's lots of techniques there, and qigong, and on and on and on. And all of these really have their origins in shamanism. So for myself, I've studied Kundalini yoga, which is all yoga is energy based, but this is a more focused energy based and breath work based yoga practice, all different kinds of energy healing techniques over the year. And so when you connect with a shaman in the modern world, they could have different types of techniques at their disposal or things that they have studied and mastered over time. But some of what is consistent is that way of life and lifestyle that is so connected to the planet and people and all of these things. And also, I believe that interdimensional travel and the healing that occurs in that space, which is, something really exciting, and I'm nerdy about discussing that more. But Betty, if you could speak a little more about your tools that you use, or not so much tools, but I want to say, just more of how this has evolved for you over the years, especially how tapped in you are. I mean, it's really incredible.
Well, I think one of the most important things when you do this type of work is to be connected to nature and to the planet and your vibration. You have to raise your vibration to a level, and you don't need protection if you are in that vibration where that's, bringing in the right type of energy. So a lot of people do prayers, and I established a relationship with a gatekeeper many years ago to keep me safe and to only allow good energy and beings of love and light to come through. And I think that would be one of my first things I would advise someone if you're following this kind of a path, to keep your vibration high by going out into nature, first of all, and finding the shamanic way of interconnectedness with the planet and with nature and the spirit realm. So when you keep your vibration like that, you don't have to be concerned about anything negative coming into your space. And a lot of people don't trust what they know that they know. They may
Yes.
say something, but you have to trust that you are the deliverer of the message. You're a spiritual messenger, and you have to not just trust, but you have to have faith that what you are saying is true. And it may not be true for everyone, but it'll ring a note with the person you're talking to. It'll resonate with that person. So you have to just start trying to give them information, and then you just know that you know. And it's difficult to come to that point. For a long time, I didn't feel comfortable working with people other than friends and family and people that I trusted, that trusted me. Now it comes very easily to me because I put my faith in a higher power. I put my faith in spirit guiding me and telling me what I should say to someone or what I should not say. So multiple messages come in, but I sort them instantly, like with a process that just takes a few seconds, and I know what I should say and what that person shouldn't hear. Because maybe there's a lesson down their path that they're supposed to learn. And if I give them too much information, it will change their life path. So it's just tools that you learn along the way, different ways to approach it.
So this is fascinating. And as you were speaking about that, it was making me think of meditation and meditation practice and why that's valuable. Getting into these deeper states of relaxation, of trance, of clearing extra thoughts and energy out of the mind. And it's often easier, I would say, or maybe we have more access to our intuitive connection in that place. One of the common practices in shamanism to get into that place is the drumming, and that's also known as auditory driving. And so it's just a repetitive drum beat that puts you in a bit of a trance and takes you into this deeper place. But what I think is really interesting is, Betty, you're also saying, we have these different tools and we can practice this, but we also have innate talents and gifts that we are born with into this life. So some people, and it's not about comparison by any means, but might really to practice in this meditative space and cultivate that space more in order to be tapped into their intuition. And some have a little bit more of a natural capacity for it right off the bat, just like, some people start playing an instrument and they're amazing at it, and others, it's going to take more time over the years, that sort of thing. So I'm just thinking of that because there are all these useful tools, but I found for myself, and although I've had, I'm going to say, psychic experiences over the course of my life and even as a child, it really was not in the capacity that you've shared with me has been your experience, just always tapped in. This was something I cultivated a lot more, I would say, when I got to about my mid 20s. And I did use a lot of these meditation techniques and different things to get into that space and to listen to my intuition more, and we'll talk about guides and traveling into these spaces more in future episodes as well. But to be able to discern the different voices and information and all of that. And some of this was an innate capacity, but again, just taking it, I really did have to practice a good amount to get into this space. But at the same time, once I got to a certain point, now I don't necessarily need to like lay down and listen to a drum beat or go through a whole practice. I can just kind of shift the energy in the moment and go to the channel. And so, like you said, you're organizing like all of these different things in a matter of seconds and then delivering what is most useful to someone. It's like you can take these quantum leaps or jumps while you're on the path. So that was a really cool experience for me to just go from, okay, I'm practicing. And then I had a few different points over, a couple of decades where suddenly it went from like one space to a whole different level of, I'll say, being tuned in or tapped in or capacity for some of this.
Well, I tell people all the time in my readings, in connecting with the person, that people tend to always look out for answers and for knowledge and for learning experiences and for help. And the secret that I've found in all my years on the planet is that you need to look inside, because everything is within you and you have to just remember as opposed to learning something new. If you just remember, know already, you have
Yes.
natural ability to just know. We can always ask our higher self. Our higher self is always watching out for us, always alert, like a periscope on a submarine. We're down here and it's always alert, always looking, always checking for us and answering us if we ask for our higher self guidance. But if you look inside through meditation or just connecting with people that don't like to meditate, I understand it's a difficult thing to learn or to think well, but you can do it walking in nature. You can do walking meditation, walking at the beach, listening to music, listening to drums, whatever, flutes, whatever might inspire you. And going inside, you find the answers inside. It's a beautiful feeling, because then you really truly believe it, because it's just remembering something that you've experienced before in other lifetimes. And I think that a lot of people want certificates on the wall. They want to have trainings and they keep trying to learn something more and to say that they're skilled at something. And you don't need to be skilled. You just need to be more naturally receptive to it and let it come through you. If you learn all these things and you still don't know how to apply them, then, it's a lot of time spent when you could spend that, meditating and getting in touch with your inner guides, or inner guidance, I would have to say. So it's a difficult concept, but there's something that we live in the world of elements, and you and I've taught a class on elements with, the earth, the 4 elements. And people are going to discover as we move closer into the 5th dimension that the 5th element is love. So if you're and you know how to, work with the 4 elements, when you get into that higher frequency, you're going to be adding the major ingredient that really makes everything right and everything beautiful, and it's love. That's the 5th element. And if you start with a heart-based message, or you start to deliver your messages with a heart-centered life, if you drop into your heart and don't think with your brain, your hard drive, your computer, if you drop into your heart and you think with your heart, that's feeling. It's not thinking. It's thinking with your heart is feeling. And if you look at everything from the perspective of what would love do, you have your answers right away, because
Right.
that's leaning towards more of a matriarchal society, nurturing everyone and putting love into everything that you do. So I
So
feel like that's a very important thing to teaching earth things, you know, like the
yeah.
elements that we see and feel and touch, and we know those four, but add that fifth one, and it gives it a completely different um, tone. You know, I think it's really important that everybody try to start doing that now, because it'll be a while before we're in the fifth dimension. It's a journey, and the earth is trying to do that now, trying to shift and um, find balance. And we need to help with that. And along the way, we're feeling a little bit of the ascension symptoms. And I mentioned this when we were off camera, but the aches and pains that you have are not significant. They are part of what we're going through. And if we could imagine on a larger scale what Gaia is going through to find balance, the photonic energy that's coming to this planet, it's recalibrating the human body. And we're going to go through some of that, especially the light workers and the people that are working in service, because that's definitely what I'm finding. Everybody's coming to doctors saying, I have this, I have that. I don't, they do tests and they don't have anything wrong with them physically.
Right.
All part of the evolution, ascension. It's
So that
important.
that really resonates with me. And a couple of things I was thinking is, one is, these days often the meditation techniques that I give clients are ones where there's multiple points of focus for the mind. So it might be movement plus a chant plus an internal visual, exercise, something like that. And I feel like our culture is so mind and mental energy oriented that even though we all have a bit of an individual capacity to, tune in, there's like this noise. And it's not even just a noise, it's like the energy, the mental energy needs to be shifted out. So oftentimes I think, especially when people are starting meditation, or they've tried it and they feel like, oh, this isn't working that well, you really mentioned that, like a walking or a moving meditation or something that combines a couple of different things for points of focus will be easier to start out with to get you into a deeper space. And then that in connection with, moving into this more sort of feminine, matriarchal energy, this heart-centered energy, that's such a different shift and a place to live your life from or navigate from, right? It's like so rich. I feel like, whenever I have an awareness of too much energy in my head and I just take a breath and inhale into the head and exhale into the space of the heart, there's this amazing reality that you can quote think from the heart space. But like you said, it's not thinking like we do with the mind or the brain, I guess you could say, but we're actually feeling, and we're in this space of knowing. And to have that intuitive ability guide our actions in the moment, the inspired actions that we take day to day in the present, I feel like that's like really where it's at.
Well, the chaos has always been there and it's always going to be there. And we have to embrace the chaos as part of the change in the paradigm, because it's an illusion. Everything that we
Right.
have going on in our heads, and the earth frequency has been stable for a long time, and it's just now changing, so that it feels like time speeded up. It feels like everything is just rushing past us like a river out of control. And it's always been like that. The chaos is always there. And you have to
Mm.
center yourself. You have to find your inner peace. And you have to realize that it still takes 9 months for a child to be gestated. It's still, robins still find a nest and put eggs in it. Nature has not changed. Time is an illusion. So it's still going at the same speed. It's
Right.
the illusion is that it's like a whirling around us. And you just have to, it's part of the ascension, it's part of the process. And you don't let it affect you. You just find your inner peace. You find a core thought or a word that gives you that feeling of peacefulness. And you don't have to be caught up in the whirlwind, or let the tornado of chaos pick you up and take you out of your reality, what we call our reality. But a lot of people are buying into the fear. They're buying into the um, chaos that's being generated. That's why the going within and finding a peaceful place, or a word or a thought or a person or whatever, music that brings you back to center. You're always going to be the same inside, as long as you think like that, as long as you bring the coherence of your heart, into play. So you have to choose and discern and choose wisely what you allow your eyes to see and your ears to hear. Because if you get caught up in believing everything that's said and everything that you think you need to believe, it's a complete, falsehood. You don't have to get caught up in that. It's going to be time without end, world without end. We have to make it a better place. I want to leave it a better place when I leave here. I want it to be something that I did make it a better place for the children.
I think that's also something that we really share and feel highly passionate about. In the beginning, I was touching on our different perspectives and the value of that. And we have a great chemistry, and part of that, I think, has to do with some intersection of those perspectives and understanding of these energies and tools and techniques, and how you can do these things and live in this way. But for me, I'm really here to be in service. And I remember a recent conversation we had where, sometimes I'm here to be in service and to also balance that within the context of my own well-being. And that has been almost, I will say, a challenge over a good portion of my lifetime. But sometimes people will say, like, you really shouldn't help that person in that way, or you really should hold back more or have a better boundary with that. And while there is a place for that being true, because yes, we have to honor ourselves and our energy and our capacity to hold space, and coming from the healthiest place we can be coming from, when it is your mission to be in service and to help others, sometimes receiving that message is, not quite valid. It's one thing to be perhaps enabling someone, or I'm trying to think of a scenario where that is a more appropriate message, like not helping somebody or you're overextending yourself. I feel like that's been true for me in many ways, but I've come to a place in my life where I have a good understanding how to cultivate my own well-being, just simple logistical things like how much sleep I need, but even how many clients I can see, or how much space I can hold, or where my emotions are at. So trusting myself with that more at this point has been really empowering, because and obviously people always have good intentions, but just for the case of explaining it, I don't need anyone to say, you shouldn't do that as much, or you shouldn't help that person. It is my mission. And for many of us, particularly healers, and if you're in a shamanic role, it's your mission to make the world a better place when you're here to hopefully leave behind, leave no trace, the smallest footprint possible, but a ripple effect of, love in whatever form that takes.
Compassion. It's
Yeah.
about, would you want someone to do that for you?
Right.
Want that to come back in kind. And Creator will always take care of people, the humans that take care of his creatures,
Yes.
the earth, that honor life. And to be compassionate doesn't take any energy any more than to just pass someone by. If you
Right.
stop and help someone, it's amazing how many people will walk past someone who needs help. And I have been judged for helping people, that are the underdog, or that have a less fortunate life than I do. And
Right.
I don't care. I don't care what anyone thinks, because I will always do that. I feel like I would want that for myself. So, if you're going to treat someone like that, hopefully that when you need it, it will come back to you. It doesn't have to be a reciprocal agreement. we're supposed to take care of each other. We're all one. We're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be taking care of each other, looking out for, how what we do affects other people and the planet, especially the planet. But definitely feeling um, like you don't have to even think about it when you know you're supposed to help someone. It feels good. It feels
Right.
good. If the other day our gardener it was 107 degrees and he's mowing the lawn and he's had a stroke and he's out there working, and I took a bowl of ice water with a rag and I took a cup of ice water for him and I told him stop, and I gave it to him, and oh my God, the smile on this man's face, I'll never forget it. It made
Right.
so good, and it made me feel better because I thought
Right.
a simple act of kindness, we all need to be masters in the art of kindness. We need to learn how to genuinely feel that feeling, because there's nothing better. You're not acting, you're feeling, and that's a genuine heartfelt thing that you're doing for that person. And it doesn't matter, I don't care what people think. I've always done that. I've always, stopped and helped people. And I think that at this point in my life, I that's been one of my biggest accomplishments, is just being kind, trying to show others how to do that, being an example.
Yeah. So not much more to say to really add to that. I think it's just simple and it's powerful. I did think of, and I'll promise to give credit because I can't think at the moment who this quote is from, and I'm just getting the beginning of it. But what came to mind in relation to community was a quote I recently read, that spoke about, oftentimes people think they are in community or connected to community, and they're really just in proximity. And to be in community, you really need to see the other person and connect in a compassionate way. So, literally, sight wise, that's making some good eye contact on the literal level. But I think it also just really connects to what you're saying, because sometimes we can kind of go around in autopilot or be in our own space. And sometimes that's okay. But ultimately, in order to be in service and to be in this compassionate place, we're living in a way where we're truly seeing the other as ourselves. So it's always a mirroring. And I think we're in a time period, we all know that there's a lot of divisiveness, in like the political landscape and just in the Western world in a variety of ways. There's just a lot of emphasis on separation. And I've even found that in certain areas of community, it's a little more, for lack of a better way of putting it, cult like. And it's like, okay, this is a community, but it's a community under these circumstances if you believe these things or if you do these certain things. So to find true community that loves and accepts everyone for who they are, it's certainly out there. I mean, obviously we have wonderful people and groups out there, but there's also this sort of thing that's propelling right now around the separation. So I know that I have different ways. Hopefully, ideally, I'm just in this space, but I do have ways to bring myself back and to go around and navigate in that, knowing that I am you and you are me, and we're connected in this bigger way. And that could go into a bigger conversation of, we are all one and collective consciousness and things that we'll talk about down the line. But it just feels really important right now. And I think, yeah, I just wanted to ask you to make sure we get this in also, like, I know there's been other times in my life also where this was the case, and there's kind of an ebb and flow of how strong it feels, if that makes sense. So it just feels a little bit heavy right now. And I don't want to bring that in too much because there's a lot of positive things to focus on. But part of the shamanism too is acknowledging the other side of things and the dark side and the shadow side, if you will, as well. So I think that this has just always been true at any time on the planet. What can you speak to in that regard, or is anything coming up?
Um, when a person wants to fix the things outside themselves. A lot of times we feel that we have to fix others, we have to fix things, we have
Mm.
to
Mm.
change things, or it's
Yes.
like terms and conditions on an agreement. Everything looks great. You're going to buy a phone, and then you look at this thing of terms and conditions. You're like, I don't know if I want to do that or not. I don't want to read it. All these terms or whatever. And we're always looking out and pointing fingers and saying, this person did this, and this person didn't do that, and this person can't do that. And I feel like, in a shamanic perspective, the
Yes.
shaman would go into a sweat lodge or go into a hut and see what they could change about themselves.
Yes.
If they change what is going on and how they are out of alignment, everything else will change outside. So it again goes back to going into the spirit world, other realms, and going into the darkness inside you, going inside to see what you need to put in alignment, because most likely it's you that's out of alignment. The world stays the same. It goes crazy. It calms, it goes crazy. It's been that way forever. But if we're out of alignment, that's when we feel that we need to change other things or other people. So respecting yourself and being honest with yourself when you find that and fixing that, that's the way to make changes. Like the man in the mirror, who are you going to change? You can't change if you don't start with yourself, right? And I think that a lot of people have played the blame game. They point their finger and
Yes.
say, this person did that, or this person can't, didn't, whatever. It's all negative. If you say, what can I do? You figure out what you can do, and then you just do that and do it thoroughly, do it well, and expect to be honest with yourself and say, I need to change these things. And I don't think that, I mean, that could be with children. You could teach that principle with children. Go in your room until you get control of yourself, and then come out and talk to me after you know what you did. What you don't punish them, you don't deprive them. You teach them that they need to look at themselves and their behavior and how it affects others and how it affects them. And I think that's just a healthier way to look at life right now. We can't change monumental things, but there are people around the clock working at fixing things. We just don't see them. All we see is the
Right.
negative media and the spins that they put on it. It's like, there are people who care. Science and art going to save the world,
Yes. I love that.
without fail. So if you think about those people that are out there that are working in think tanks, for 6-7 days, brilliant minds, they're working on things we don't even know about. Some microbe in the bottom of the ocean, they're fixing things while we're worrying about whether we have enough foam on our latte.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
we don't think about that higher perspective where there are people that care so deeply that they devote their entire life to things like that. And
Right.
we have to respect that and know that that is going on, and we can do our part and not be trivial and not be selfish. You can be self-thinking, but not selfish. Take care of yourself.
I love that you mentioned, raising children in this way, or at least teaching them to look inwards, because I think our society has taught us, it's kind of like programming that we're not even aware of, that, yeah, if something's wrong, like you said, what do I fix in my exterior world? Who should change or what should change? When the exterior is really just a reflection of that inner space. And so there's so much magic being able to tune in and go inward, but also that's where the quote work is to be done, so to speak, in terms of getting information or potentially healing, so that we can be in this deeper place of connection with not just other people, but again, our whole environment, like really feeling that connection to the earth and just everything in our experience. And I did want to say one thing also, and we may have touched on this earlier, but as far as what's useful about living in a shamanic way or living closely connected to the earth. Like, probably most of our listeners are not wondering this, but maybe, if anyone is wondering, like, okay, what's the benefit if there are, some things I'm going to change or work towards to live more in this way? I would say ultimately, I think it's a critical piece of spiritual health. So again, this is something where you can have any religious beliefs, you can be atheist, you can have any perspective, but the bottom line is, like, humans, light beings, we're animals, we're a part of the planet and the earth, and we're connected with all of this. So if we live with a separation or an isolation from that, that really does impact our health and well-being, and it has a ripple effect to others as well. And the simplest thing, yeah,
shamanism precedes organized religions.
yes,
and you go back in time, when you think about, just the basic way of, they did everything. They were the weather forecasters, they were the psychologists, they were the therapists, they did everything. And it was before we separated ourselves with all these different organized religions. And if you believe in what they did, it's coming down all the time. It's coming down in other ways, other modalities of healing and things. But when you go back to that original belief or that original thought, it's about going into the spirit world like you do when you're journeying, and about nature. It's about watching nature,
yeah,
and the outcome. What are we observing when we watch nature? It's very simple. It's just very simple, because nature doesn't question anything. A dog doesn't know it's going to die. A dog doesn't think about the rent. The dog goes to the beach, lives in the moment. The wind is blowing their hair back, and they're just enjoying that moment. And if we learn to live in the moment and not to get too far away from nature and spirit realm, I think that we bring a richer experience of being a human here in this incarnation. Because if that dog, he's enjoying that moment, and you say, you want to play ball, he's down the beach, right? You have to live in the moment and be able to change like that. You have to be able to adapt, because it's always this moment. If I'm eating a salad and I say, right now I'm taking a bite of salad, a couple of minutes later, right now I'm taking a bite of salad. Right now you're taking a bite of salad until you finish the bowl, right? But it's always right now. It's that moment. So if we can focus less on the past and the future, and just deal with each moment, look at it in a perspective without time. Just say, at this moment, I'm doing this. Like the Buddha says, relax and enjoy the beauty before you, and the future will work itself out.
And I think it's having faith in ourselves that we know how to navigate things. So the past and the future, in a certain respect, that's not even real as far as being in this present moment.
They're not
Yeah. And so, right. I mean, I think that, being able to be in the moment, what am I trying to say? And really sort of connect with that when we're also connected to our intuition, and we can go into these deeper spaces, we take inspired action in that moment, so we can have a trust and a faith that we'll know how to navigate for our highest good and the good of all. The more focused we are in the moment, the more clear that is. It's when we get into the mind about the past and the future and these other things that starts to water down our energy and shift the timelines and the choices that we make.
Well, when you say, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it,
Yes.
you worry about a bridge and crossing it before you even get to the bridge. And people worry constantly about, what if this and what if that, and I might this and I might that. And I use an analogy for people who have fear, that say there's a suspension bridge and you're in Indonesia, and you're going to go across this bridge, and there's a raging river down below, and intellectually that is a dangerous bridge, right? but it may not fall while you're on it, but it might. And so you
Right.
have to have a calculated risk. You say, well, how many hundreds of people go across that bridge every day? But if you start across that bridge and it's made of wood slats, and all of a sudden there's two slats that are out, you stop immediately with fear that you're going to fall through the bottom of the bridge and end up in the water. What is that mechanism that's in play right there? People that cross that bridge every day jump over that opening. They don't think anything of it.
Yes.
It's a difference in your perspective. The fear stops you, because the illusion
Yes.
of what might happen to you. We don't have to live in that type of a way. We can just deal with each thing that comes to us as it comes to us. When you get to that place, hold on tighter to the rails and jump over the opening, and you get across the bridge. But there's no need to think about it and worry about things that you don't want to happen. When you worry, you're writing a check for something you don't want.
Oh my gosh, yes. I think also, what's so powerful about that is as you're explaining it, I also was just getting the feeling of, we like in terms of manifestation and co-creating, and this again is an episode, we'll do a whole thing on that. But when you're in the moment like that, your perspective creates your reality. So that example of the being in the fear or not being in the fear, we have all these choices in every moment. And I won't go down a rabbit hole with this, but just underscoring, that piece feels valuable. There is quantum scientific reality to how we are focused, where our intention is, where our attention is, and the perspective that we have in any moment. So that can be a really positive, empowering thing as we own that more. It's more of a co-creative process.
Fear built in for protection. Like when the saber-toothed tiger's outside the cave and you're inside the cave, you're fearful, and your body's throwing out all kinds of chemicals that say that you should be afraid. We haven't changed over the eons of time that much. We still have that fight or flight response. And so when you have fear, the fear is going to paralyze you. When you're going across that bridge, if you're afraid of falling or afraid of the opening, that's going to paralyze. You're going to stop right there. But then years and years of adjusting to the knowledge that we don't have to worry about the tiger outside the cave, we have a choice. We can choose fear. And there's only two things really that I find, and it's consistent: love and fear. And love
Yes.
has. So you love the experience of going across that bridge. You look at the water, you make it across, and you feel great because you were brave. It didn't mean you didn't have that fear, but you conquered that fear.
Yes.
You went past it.
I love
And it's
that.
an interesting concept because so many people get that analogy more than if I explain to them what they're afraid of and why would they be afraid. If you tell someone, oh, you don't have to be afraid, they look at you like you're crazy because they feel it's real.
Right.
They're real. If someone's crouched over in the corner and you say, when you go in the room, they say, watch out for those tigers. And you look around and you're like, I don't see any tigers. There's no tigers. If you tell that person there's no tigers, what are they going to think? They're going to think they're crazy.
Right.
In their reality, they believe there are tigers there, right? So you don't have to be enforcing or reinforcing the fear. You just have to understand that that's their reality. People choose to live in fear. Sometimes that's the way their brain is working or their psychology. But I know that you don't want someone to think they're crazy to add to the problem, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing when you're counseling people, because if you tell them, like the story about the bridge, they get it. They've been there. They get it. I've been there.
Yes.
I don't actually crossed a bridge like that, and I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to jump over this opening, right? And that's why I use it, because I remember all the chemicals that my body kicked out when I stopped suddenly, and there's people behind me and they're like, move on, and I thought, oh my God, you know, fear is an interesting thing. And we should do a conversation about that later on in time, because
Yes.
be love and fear and conquering your fears, that's some inner work for sure.
Yes. Yeah, and we're coming, it looks like we just have a few more minutes. So I would love to end on the vibration of love, but I first want to give you all a little information to connect. And so, absolutely, thank you for listening in. Thank you for joining us. Again, we are just so excited to be offering this, to be connecting with you. If you have questions or comments on any of this, there'll be places where you can leave those and we can tune in and respond and cover things next time as
Yes.
well. Yes, topic suggestions. And so Betty, her website is wherethelightIs.net, and her email is wherethelightIs11@gmail.com. So you can contact her if you're interested in a psychic session or if you have questions as well. And my website is Pavan Sirona. That's Pavan. Sirona is Sirona.com. And that's an easy place to reach me. So we are going to end cultivating this vibration of love and also reconnecting to that knowing that this is a transmission, a healing transmission for all who tune into the energy field of this co-creative space. And Betty is going to leave us with a message that brings us full circle, I want to say, back to that shamanic root of the lens that we're looking through, and this shamanic energy that really has been here since the beginning of time for humans. So
Okay. And again, thank you. We really enjoyed bringing these things to light today. And thank you, Erin, for having me. It's a pleasure always. Until we meet again, sit in circle, tending our hearts, cultivating our shared love and joy, supporting the ascension of our planet. Our light to yours.
thank you so much.